Welcome to the SOB radio show, where we have fun, interesting guests, and hot topics. Each week, we offer insights into music, fashion, health, fitness, and humor. Do you have the perfect guest for us to interview? I want to know. Drop me a line on our Facebook page at SpunkyOldBroad1 or reach out to me on our website at SpunkyOldBroad.com. And now, back to the show.
We are in for a treat today. My guest is Marilyn King. She's a two-time Olympic pentathlete, and she is a peak performance expert and a peace enthusiast. This two-time Olympian is incredible. I happened to meet her and thought, oh, she's perfect. She's got to be on the show. Her 20-year athletic career includes 5 national titles and a world record. But an automobile accident in 1979 rendered her unable to train physically for her 3rd Olympic team. Now, this is what's amazing. I'm sure you've heard this before, but here is a living proof of this. Using only mental training techniques, she placed 2nd at the Olympic trials for the 1980 Moscow Games. This extraordinary experience and resulting research led to a 35-year career as an expert in the field of exceptional human performance. Her work focuses on systemic change in the areas of business, education, and peace. Her participation in an international 5-year think tank on the role of business in peace building led to a career conducting programs for senior executives with global responsibilities at Fortune 500 companies. Her clients include AT&T, IBM, IKEA, Microsoft, Nokia, Oracle, Starbucks, and Wells Fargo. She's also presented at over 200 national and international education conferences with academicians and researchers who are designing the schools of the future. Her most pioneering work, a joint Russian-American venture called the Peace Team, resulted in 2 opportunities to speak at the United Nations and an invitation to create a UN subcommittee on the role of sport in peace building. Oh, Marilyn, I have so many questions I want to ask you. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Gayle. It was a delight to meet you at the East Bay Women's Conference, where Dr. Jill Biden was the luncheon keynote speaker.
Yeah, she was delightful as well. There are so many great women doing so many great things, but I just have a whole bunch of questions based on your intro. First of all, it's what is it like working with the Russians? I guess that's my first question, because we're hearing so much about Russia and the presidency and all of that. What is it like with working with Russia and also on a peace team?
Yeah. It was really very, very interesting. And my direct engagement with Elena Petrushkova from the then Soviet Union came about because Ted Turner decided that he needed to do something during the Cold War. And he invited 100 Russians from 100 different disciplines to meet one-on-one with an American from the same discipline. So he brought 100 Russians to the United States. So there were one of each, military people, one of each teachers. So there was one of each Olympians. So Elena Petrushkova and I were there. And the purpose of the whole program that Ted Turner put together, called the Citizen Summit, was that each of these pairs would create a joint project. And that's where Elena and I created the Peace Team, which was positing what would it be like if people who want to live in peace all thought of themselves as on the same team. And some things became very clear. It's like, well, you have to be clear about what the goal is, right? If you're playing basketball, you know about the hoop, right? If you're talking about peace, people are pretty unclear. So we just engaged all kinds of different things to take a look at how people's thinking and behavior would shift if they thought about peace, like we as Olympians thought about gold medals. And I have to say, in direct answer to your question, having visited the Soviet Union at that time many times, I just so clearly saw the distinction between how the governments treat each other and what they say and what they do versus who the people are. And I just fell in love with the Russian people who I met and being there. And, just they were grounded and playful and interested and interesting. So I've enjoyed my relationship through Elena Petrushkova and the Russian friends that I have made over the years.
That's fabulous. I actually did a program in Russia, and I found the same thing. I found the people just delightful. And I went over there, especially in Moscow, and I really thought I was going to see these, horribly looking women who were, heavy and just, what the old version, shall we say, almost like my grandmother's, and gosh, stylish, gorgeous, beautiful, really surprised.
Yeah.
And but I have to say, they always laugh when they say in Beauty Queens, what do you want? And they say, I want world peace. Well, I really do want world peace. I mean, when people say, what is your most important thought that you have, I say, I want world peace. So that's very interesting that you created this peace team. I'm not sure where we are at this point with it, but I think that was important. But you also say that one new thought can change your whole life. So tell us a story of when you first experienced this.
Yeah, let me answer that question in a moment, but I'd like to follow up what you said about, peace and where are we relative to that before we go to the next thought, which is if you have something that you care about a lot, like world peace or whatever it might be, if you are poorly informed about that issue, if you have beliefs based on old, outdated information and data, you can't possibly be effective in deciding what's the most important thing you can do and developing a strategy to achieve it if all of what you're thinking is based on old, outdated information. And I believe that's exactly where we are relative to peace. That people, as soon as you bring up the word, they kind of roll their eyes or they think, tie-dye, peace sign, woo-woo, nice idea. But most of the people who have ever lived on the planet have had to live cooperatively with one another, or we wouldn't even exist as a species. So I could talk at length about this, but I think it's really important that people pay attention to becoming really well informed if you care about peace. What is the history? What is the status? Who are the people who are doing the high-level strategic global systemic things? And you will become extremely inspired about where we are, as well as being informed about what the problems are and who are the people who are directly addressing those problems that you could be helpful to. So I just wanted to kind of close our part of, this part of the conversation.
Well, I don't disagree with you at all, Marilyn. I agree that, which is why I think it's so important that we go to other countries. We listen to the people. I've had the pleasure of staying in people's homes. I've been invited to their homes for dinner after, I've given a presentation because they've liked what I said, and they've invited me and they've befriended me in a lot of different ways. I'm sure the same thing has happened to you. And you get such a different picture of what's going on in the world when you have those opportunities presented to you. And then there are the others who are exactly what you said. They're living in the past. They've got this square perimeter around their thoughts, and they really don't care to learn anything else. So I'm glad we've got people like you.
Yeah.
So now give us this new thought that would change your whole life.
Yeah. I think most people now kind of recognize that you wake up in the morning and your thoughts are all just bumper to bumper to bumper to bumper. And where do I need to be? And I need to do that. And it's almost like there's nobody in charge. But my first experience was having been a military brat and moving from place to place and not doing very well making friends. I got involved in sports. And it was fine because I was a B+ athlete, and eventually I would get picked for a team, and it was easy to make friends. And then one day, they invited someone I had beaten to go to the Olympic training camp. And it was like, well, sometimes you beat somebody who had a bad day, but the girl that I beat, that they invited to the Olympic training camp, I had competed against her all day, and I knew I was a better athlete than she was. And so if the Olympic Committee thinks she can be in the Olympics and I'm a better athlete than she is, what do you think my next thought was?
Exactly.
Well, it was a crazy, stupid idea. I mean, it's like I know people who are faster than me and stronger, and just I had this left brain conversation like, don't be an idiot. That's a stupid idea. But then this other side, this other voice would show up and say, yeah, but the Olympic Committee invited her, and you're better than she is. That means I could be in the Olympics. And so I woke up every day after that thinking this crazy thought that was too embarrassing to tell anyone. But it was like, well, if I'm going to be in the Olympics, I can't stay here on Staten Island when I graduate from high school. I'm going to have to go back to California where all the good coaches are. And how can I do that when my parents don't have the money? I'll have to get a better job this summer and, earn more money. And I have to. So all of these new thoughts, because I kept waking up thinking I could be in the Olympics, my brain said, well, if that's even going to have a chance, you're going to have to do all of these new thoughts and ideas that led to new plans and behaviors. And it took me to 2 Olympic teams and then training for my 3rd team, which you described in the introduction.
What I guess my question to you is, what was it or why was it that they did choose her over you?
What I didn't know until later is that her uncle was friends with the officials.
So yeah.
So
well,
even though it wasn't really
those things, I don't know, Marilyn. They still are trying to shake out a lot of these Olympic committees and so forth. That's because there is this favoritism or this hiding or this whatever. So that had got to be very difficult for you when you discovered that.
Yeah, actually, I'm forever grateful, because if she hadn't had the uncle who was friends, with the committee, they wouldn't have invited her, and I would never have had the one thought that changed my whole life.
Well, see, now that's taking something bad that happens and turning it into a positive. So that certainly is interesting. Now you had this accident, and but you fought back from it. I mean, where does that come from? And how long did it take you to come back from that?
Yeah, and I didn't even feel like I fought back from it. I had been on 2 Olympic teams. And by the way, the pentathlon is 5 track and field events: hurdle, shot put, high jump, long jump, and 800 meters. And I'd been to the Olympics twice. I had taken a year's leave of absence so that for my 3rd Olympic team in 1980, I could take the very last year of the 4 years and do nothing but train for 24/7. And that's when my car was hit from behind. And it wasn't a big, ugly accident, but it produced what turned out to be a bulging disc and was misdiagnosed. But what it did, and the theme here is thinking, what it allowed me to think was, oh, it's just a tweak. I'm getting better every day, and I'll be in the top 3 at the Olympic trials. Well, that was November of 1979. And December and January and February, I'm going to physical therapy and different doctors, and I'm still thinking it's a tweak, and I'm getting better every day, and I'll be in the top 3 at the Olympic trials, which are in the summer. And I'm not getting any better, and I can't hop from foot to foot, and I've got nothing to do but train. I'm supposed to be doing that 6 to 8 hours a day, and I'm just going to doctors and laying on my back. So I thought, well, I have to do something. So I got films of the world record holders in all 5 of my events. And I thought, well, I'll just watch these films, for a week. But I'm getting better every day, and I'll be in the top 3. And I watched these films for about 6 weeks till I was sick of them. And then I had somebody set up my 5 events out on the track, and I would spend 3.5 or 4 hours just standing there, envisioning my training or envisioning my competition. And now it's March, April, and May, and I still haven't been able to jog or train, and it's time for the Olympic trials. And so I had them give me a Novocaine injection in my back. So without training from November until the Olympic trials, I competed in the Olympic trials, and I placed 2nd at the trials for the 1980 Moscow Games, and beat younger, faster, more talented athletes who'd been training 6 to 8 hours a day. So it was really a life-altering experience that caused me to quit my head coaching position at UC Berkeley and start to explore what the heck happened. How do ordinary people like me do something that's impossible? So that's what I've been teaching for the last 35 years, and I call it Olympian thinking.
This is just beyond me. I can understand the visualization process. I get that. But still, with athletes who are training 6, 8 hours a day and you visualizing,
I know.
how does that compute? I mean, what does that say to the athletes who are training 6, 8 hours a day? Is it unnecessary? Is it the wrong training? Would they not get there without it? Uh, do they all have to do this Olympian thinking? I mean, what is the process there?
Well, for me, I have sitting here with a big grin on my face because if you're going to compete at the elite level in something, you definitely have to have the very best coach, who really knows about the technique and the training regimen and how to, all of the things that a great coach. So the ones who really excel are people who have a very knowledgeable coach, are willing to put in the hard work. But when you add the mindset to that, I believe that most of the athletes that you see at that level are doing what we're talking about, but for many of them, it's unconscious. We do now have sports psychologists who I don't all think are that great, given some of the things I've seen and read and heard. But if you can bring the elite level of the kind of thinking that I call Olympian thinking, along with the good coach and the willingness to train hard and the tremendous desire to be there, that's what puts people over the top. But people like me who were above average in capability, but had the smartest coach, worked harder than anybody, but had an elite level of how to think about things. It allows people like me to be people who are better than me, but don't quite have the mindset that I did. So I was able to compete with the best because of my mindset.
Well, it's interesting because I remember with this past Olympics, I heard the commentators talk a lot about muscle memory, and they said muscle memory is kicking in just as if it even if they were not sure of something, that their muscle memory, because they had practiced and trained so long, would kick in. Where does that come in?
Well, it's certainly true that if you've done something tens of thousands of times a certain way, that your mind and body are connected. And if you get your own fears or anxieties out of the way, that will take over. And, that's what took over for me at the Olympic trials, because I hadn't been able to physically train, but I kept envisioning I'll be in the top 3 at the Olympic trials. And I don't actually remember very much about the competition. I can't tell you what lane I was in for the hurdles or, who was still jumping when I was jumping. It's almost like I was on some kind of an automatic pilot.
Wow.
Yeah.
So here you are, you talk about this Olympian thinking, and you do it in business and in education and in peace. So tell us your most important messages in each of these areas, because it's got to be fabulous.
Yeah. We could be here for a very long time, but the basic premise and what plays through all 3 of those areas is what Olympian thinking basically says is when you see individuals or organizations that do something extraordinary or excel over the long haul, 3 things are really present. And one we've been talking about, which is a mindset, which is where most of my teaching and training happens. But it's always passion-powered. Those people are not doing something they should or they're supposed to or because someone told them they have to. It's like the most important thing to them. Michael Phelps, wanting to win 8 gold medals, someone wanting to get their family out of a war-torn country. They're passionate about it, and that's the fuel. That's the energy source that fuels exceptional performance. Then there's the mindset that you bring to that, and then there have to be the game plan and the daily practices. So, I call it passion-powered, vision-guided, and action-oriented. And when we apply that to business, the work that I do with executives and leadership teams right now really takes them through a series of things that helps them recognize that, number one, where is your team? If they're coming to work feeling, anxious and concerned about things and afraid they might lose their job to artificial intelligence, that's not a peak performance kind of state to be in. And, so it really does affect what they can think and therefore what they do. So part of what I do with leadership teams is letting leaders know that one of the most important things they can do right now is really to tell a very well-informed and compelling story of now. It's like, look, here's where our industry came from. Here's where this company, who founded this company, here's where we are now, and here's where we're intending to go, given everything that's going on. And that you tell a story that people want to be part of that team. People want to be part of creating the new gold standard for energy in the country, or a new standard for food production or for transportation, but they're excited to be part of the next generation of what it is your company does. And then there's the mindset that because we are in a constant and accelerated change standpoint, if you are head of an organization where people are still resistant to change, there are very specific things that you can do within your team that it's like a basketball team. Everybody there is still learning, even the ones at the highest elite level. So how do you create an environment where people are excited to be clear about what their strength is and how they're bringing that to your team, but they're also clear that they've got something that they can work on that will help bring them, up to a next level of performance. So we create an environment in which people are clear about those things and have an environment of support to develop the things that they want to develop. And then there's a game plan that really supports those daily practices and the progress people make and how to celebrate almost on a daily basis, our wins and where we're going. So, that's kind of how it plays out in the business domain. But let me pause there and see if I elicited any kind of question.
Yeah. We have about just about 3 or 4 minutes left in this segment, and then we'll be coming back after our break. But I think most leaders today, it's a terrible thing to say. Let me say this, many leaders today are very confused about where they're going.
Exactly.
Because every day there's like a new something, whether it's somebody hacking into their system, whether there's a new technological development, whether or not they understand how to work with both millennials and boomers in the same environment. I mean, there just is it's complicated today. And I'm not sure how many leaders, and this could be at not only the C level, but also senior management and so forth, and mid-level managers, I'm sure they don't know what to do.
You're exactly right, Gayle. You're exactly right, which is why my work is so fun and exciting right now, because it really has them recognize the level of anxiety that they're carrying and that that's not a peak performance place to be coming from as an individual, much less as a leader. So that's why the processes and tools that I use in Olympian thinking are being so well received right now, because you're exactly right. Even our leaders are anxious. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, crazy. And then, of course, you've got crazy players in other parts of the world who are also adding to the anxiety because nobody knows what's coming next. And that's very difficult as well. Well, we only have about 2 minutes left in this segment. So can you tell us about maybe education or peace in that amount of time?
Yeah, very simply, in terms of education, what we've been talking about in terms of Olympian thinking is something that I discovered, after I had retired from the Olympics. And so I have worked with education organizations all over the country and internationally in accelerated learning. And the bottom line is, whether you're an educator or a parent or part of a community, I believe that our job is, number one, to help young people discover what it is that really matters to them. Get them connected to something they care about that gets them excited to think about, and then teach them these thinking skills and give them the support structure. So once again, in terms of education, once you hook somebody to what they're passionate about, and all you have to do is look at the young people who marched all over the country on Saturday, there is Olympian thinking. They are passion powered. They are really clear about their what up to, and they are not going to stop.
It's interesting. In my newsletter this past week, I wrote about this. I said, as a media coach, I couldn't have been more proud of these young people because, A, they got their message out succinctly. They made their points. They used props with the signs that they had and on themselves, because many of them had painted slogans on their shirts, etc. And they had the passion. And that's what it takes to get this message out. And I was so proud of they talk about young people not having the ability to get things done, or not caring about anything, or being inarticulate. And here were people that did a better job of saying what was on their mind than most of our politicians.
There you go.
There were no ums, there were no ahs. They got their message out, and I mean, I couldn't have been prouder. Well, folks, we have Marilyn King, who is a two-time Olympic pentathlete, and also she's a peak performance expert, and she will be back with us when we continue in our next part. Stay in there.